All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. This is your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. We're on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. If you're on YouTube and Rumble, please make sure that you like and share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you can rate it, please do that, or whatever it is on those platforms that you can do. We would certainly appreciate that. And then all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me. I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, True Social Getter. Several things that I want to weigh in on. And then later on in the program, we're going to have Emily Davis with the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America Foundation joining us to talk to us about how we put the left on defense on the issue of abortion, because you know they're going to use it as a cudgel leading up to 2024. I have talked about this a lot. This isn't an issue we're going to be able to run away from, but there's so much more that I would like to get to before we get into that. Joe Biden's poll numbers are tanking. He sits in the worst place as far as polling is concerned than presidents have in decades. So we'll talk about this, talk about that. The Arizona rancher, you guys may or may not have heard this story, but it was a very, just a heart-wrenching story and a really scary story, in my opinion. There was an Arizona rancher that was accused of murdering an illegal alien that was trespassing on his 174 or 178 acre ranch. This guy and his wife had retired recently. I think he used to work for the government in some way, shape, or form, or school district or something in Montana. They retired to Texas. They buy this property, and then before you know it, he's caught up in a 1.5-year battle after illegal aliens are on his property. He shoots up some warning shots, and then they charge him with murder, never finding bullets or any of that kind of stuff. We'll get to that. 4 cops were murdered in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. We'll talk to you about that. Just what that means. Kristi Noem has committed political suicide. She shot her dog and killed her political career. So we'll talk about that. And I got to be honest with you. I know this is going to sound mean. I'm so glad. I'm so glad she made the decision, or her publicist or publisher or whomever made the decision to put this story out about Kristi Noem shooting her dog. Kristi Noem is not a conservative. I was fooled by Kristi Noem. I want to talk about that. This is a godsend, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sure she'll be able to work her way back into the fold at some point in time. But thank goodness, I don't think that'll be happening this year as Trump's VP. The Hamas protests continue across college campuses. We'll talk about that as well. So again, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I appreciate you joining us today. Let me do this. Let me start with Kristi Noem. Because I didn't get to touch on this yesterday. And I'll be honest with you, I passed this story up, and I should have touched on it. I just saw the headline and I was like, Kristi Noem trying to act tough. And I went on, and then it became big news. And it's like, you know what? I had that instinct to touch on it, and I should have. But I'm going to touch on it simply because I just think it's important to know. And I think we dodged a bullet. I really believe. Well, her dog didn't dodge a bullet, Gabe. You know what I'm saying? But we dodged a bullet in Kristi Noem. Man, maybe I'll play with that title. Dodged a bullet somehow. I was going to say something else, but anyway, I'll play with that. I'm sorry. I'm writing stuff down literally as I'm podcasting. All right. So this story with Kristi Noem, let me touch on it real quick, because again, this broke yesterday. Plenty of people talked about it, but let me start here. This couldn't have happened to a better person, in my opinion. Kristi Noem is not a conservative. I've been saying this for quite some time now. She simply is not. When she was in the House of Representatives, she had an abysmal voting record. I believe it was somewhere 54, 58%. I'm looking at Heritage's Foundation, Heritage Action for America, and their score of her while she was in Congress, in the 115th Congress, and she had a very low score. She was virtually a Democrat. I mean, 58%. Her session score ultimately came out to about 60 I'm sorry, 58%. Her session score ended up being 64%. So this is a lady that is barely a Republican, if anything. And what she had in man, I forget if she's in North Dakota or South Dakota. I always forget. Forgive me. But one of the Dakotas that she's the governor of, she's the benefactor of a conservative legislature. All right. And so during the lockdowns, as a matter of fact, it was the legislature that forced Kristi Noem's hand in keeping the state open because she wanted more lockdown stuff. She wanted to follow more of the federal government's guidance, if you will. And so they fought her, her legislature fought her, and she wasn't going to win that battle. So she went ahead and signed legislation. Kudos to her for signing the legislation, but she didn't lead the charge, right? She's not a Governor Ron DeSantis. She's not a Governor Kim Reynolds of Iowa. She didn't lead the charge. She is worse than like Governor Greg Abbott, who would come out and do some good stuff during COVID, but he was typically watching what DeSantis was doing and saying, "Oh, I better do the same thing." But Kristi Noem wasn't even her instinct. All right. And then on the trans issue, I gave her the benefit of the doubt because she was talking about this. Listen, she wanted to make sure with this trans issue, dudes participating in chica sports, in girls sports, if you will. She wanted to make sure, right, that she was able to win that court or win that case in the courtroom. She wanted a solid case, and the way this legislation would be passed down, it would be overturned, so on, etc. No, just come to find out, she was just scared to fight the battle. All right. She didn't have the cojones, and I don't expect her to. Actually, I do expect her to, not to have cojones, but I expect her to have the courage to fight that battle because she's a female. And she knows better. We all know better. Men shouldn't be in women's sports. And so I remember Tucker Carlson calling her out on that. And she gave some willy-nilly excuse. And I really thought this lady was a straight up true to the heart conservative, and she's more of a political opportunist. All right. And that's just the bottom line. Not to mention, I don't know if this has been confirmed, but plenty of people have talked about it, and have mentioned it, but there are, rumors and or speculation, that she had an affair with one of Trump's guys, Corey Lewandowski, when he was working on the campaign and all this kind of stuff. So these are all the things that would have to be answered for, and you don't need the left throwing more ammo on you or at you. So here's the story for those of you that may or may not be unfamiliar with it. But I will say this: I think we dodged a bullet. So basically, Kristi Noem had this dog, this working dog. It's called a wire hair pointer, 14-month-old by the name of Cricket. I would not have put the name in the book. Automatically, you're going to make people more sentimental to the issue. But here's what Kristi Noem tried to do. She tried to act tough. Kristi Noem tried to act tough. Gabe, this is a very important point. You should make sure you get this down. All right. So anyway, what Kristi Noem was trying to do with this book, and what is the name of this? What is the name of her book? But in her upcoming book, No Going Back, is the title of the book. She wanted to put stories in there that, made her look more vulnerable, transparent, but also tough, right? She wanted to look tough. Here's what I have to say about that. You don't have to give me any stories of your life about acting tough or any of this kind of stuff. All I have to do is check your political record. That shows me everything I need to know about your toughness. What did you vote for when you were when you were in Congress? What did you do as governor? You have a record as governor. You don't have to try and impress people with the story about shooting your dog and trying to say, well, it proves that I'm going to make the tough decisions. No. Shooting your dog isn't a tough decision. I think keeping your dog alive and training your dog properly is probably the better, tougher decision, because you gotta work it out through the long run. It's absolutely insane. But basically, she admitted to, I guess, going to The dog was a little hyper, 14 months old, or whatever. And she ends up shooting the dog in the head. This, according to Breitbart, portrays the shooting of a 14-month-old puppy in the head as a virtuous act of leadership that proves she's ready for the tough decisions. That's what I've already said. And honestly, it just makes no sense whatsoever. It says here, Cricket was a wire hair pointer, about 14 months old. And an aggressive, she had a female dog. She had an aggressive personality, according to Noem. So Noem took the dog pheasant hunting, hoping to calm her down by teaching her to hunt. Instead, Cricket ruined everything by going, quote, out of her mind with excitement, chasing all those birds and having the time of her life, close quote. Yeah, sounds like something a dog would do if they're, in a field, let loose, and they're seeing pheasants for the first time. I don't know. Sounds like regular, normal dog behavior to me. But after that disastrous hunt, she said, Noem said she stopped to see a neighbor. Cricket then jumped out of the truck and ravaged the neighbor's chickens, grabbing one chicken at a time, crunching it to death with one bite, then dropping it to attack another, close quote. When Noem grabbed the dog's collar to stop the chicken massacre, Noem said Cricket, quote, whipped around to bite me, close quote. Noem claims the dog acted like a trained assassin that day, but was also, quote, the picture of pure joy, close quote, which is so weird. She admitted that she hated the dog and decided Cricket was untrainable, dangerous to anyone she came in contact with. And she said, at that moment, I realized I had to put her down. Really? At 14 months? Listen, guys, I've had dogs, have dogs now. At 14 months old, listen, if you can't handle a puppy, don't get a puppy. You can get older dogs, but even older dogs, you'll have to train if they come into your house and you adopt them. That's what we've done here. And dogs are trainable. Literally at every age, they learn your routine. So this makes no sense to me whatsoever. This is Kristi Noem trying to sound tough. This is Kristi Noem trying to say she can make a tough decision. But I'm sorry, shooting a dog in the head, a vulnerable dog in the head, putting it in a gravel pit and popping a cap in the dog's head is not the same thing as dealing with Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin or even the crazy commies in the Democrat Party. It's just simply not the same thing, and it was totally unnecessary. I'm a dog person now, all right? I didn't feel this way. I remember back in the day, my family and I, we first got dogs. I used to look at people walking dogs gate, and I would say, ugh, how gross. These people are picking up their poop and all that kind of stuff. I could never do that. And then we got dogs, all right? And I absolutely fell in love with the dogs. And then I was one of those people, all right, out there picking up the dog's poop and all that kind of stuff. And then when our dogs died, it was freaking devastating to me. I'm not going to lie to you. I cried like a little baby. I never thought I would feel that way about a dog. Absolutely, absolutely never. All right. And we had dogs growing up and I loved dogs. But I didn't want to get dogs. As I was older, we went ahead and decided to get some. And man, I mean, one in particular, Bella, that just absolutely stole my heart. And, oh, my Lord, when she died, it was so unexpected. It was so sudden. Like one of these blood vessels or something burst in her body. And anyway, it was, oh my goodness. So she was 10 years old, pit bull, but the sweetest thing ever. I mean, just the sweetest dog, and so smart. It was insane. But anyway, and also Casper, he died a couple years later. But anyway, I never thought that I would experience love like that or have love like that for a dog. But all of that to say they're trainable, especially at 14 months old. Man, you know what? Take the dog out more. Take the dog out on a leash, train it, or take the dog whatever you need to do. Just train that dog. The issue isn't the dog. The issue is the person. That's why you can see. That's why, listen, you can grow up, right? In the hood, like I did, and you're terrified of pit bulls. Listen, still to this day, I wouldn't want to be bit or attacked by a pit bull, but whatever pit bull you saw in the hood, you would assume that it would be vicious, not just towards animals, but possibly towards you, because a lot of idiots didn't train them properly, or sadly, where I grew up, would use them for fighting, or just because they wanted a tough dog and stuff like that, they would use them for guard dogs, right? But and then when you move out of the hood, like I have, and then you see dogs, you see people walking pit bulls and they're, walking them with other dogs, and they're more tame and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's the owner. It always comes down to the owner. But I am so glad that Kristi Noem, in my opinion, has taken herself out of VP contention because she didn't deserve to be there. The last thing that we need, if Trump does get elected, we don't need a VP that could potentially win in 2028 that is going to be a soft and squishy moderate. You know that the left is going to throw everything at Trump, plus a kitchen sink, plus an army tank, plus whatever else they're going to throw at him if he does, in fact, become president again. And the last thing you need is a squishy moderate as your VP to potentially take over in 2028. I'm hoping that DeSantis will take over in 2028, but that's just me. I think we need a Calvin Coolidge type conservative even after the post-Trump era, just because I don't think, tactically speaking, we're going to be able to get as much done as we would like, even if Trump does win. So I think that we have to have generational winning where we continue to go on the offense when it comes to the left and continue to implement conservative policy. And no one in America has done that better, quite frankly, than Governor Ron DeSantis. All right. And so I'm hoping that he'll be the guy, not the VP pick. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm so glad Kristi Noem is out of contention. Again, a very low Liberty score. I mean, a 64% overall. Guys, that is a Democrat. That is a Democrat. All right. She didn't handle COVID right. And she tried to pretend like she did just because her legislature handcuffed her. She was weak when it came to men participating in girls' sports when she frankly didn't have to be. And then again, her record while she was in the House, literally like 50 something percent Liberty score, which means she's a Democrat. All right. So no thanks, pretty face, all that kind of good stuff. But listen, we're talking policy. So no thanks. And all she was trying to do was sound tough when honestly, Governor Noem, you don't need to share stories like this. I don't know who advised you to put this out. But all people have to do is look at your political record. That's it. And honestly, I'm so glad this happened because I just don't want people getting duped. All right. Now, moving on. 4 police officers have been shot and killed. Another 4 injured in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Basically, these U.S. Marshal, a couple other law enforcement agents. I forget, they were from the adult something unit. I read the story earlier. I don't even know what that is. And also a U.S. Marshal. They went to serve serve a warrant to this particular felon. This guy had legal weapons charges and all this kind of stuff. Apparently had firearms that he wasn't allowed to have, and ended up engaging in a shootout. Ultimately, he was killed, but unfortunately, he killed 4 law officers as well. 4 others that were injured in that shootout. And honestly, guys, I think this just goes back to the defund the police movement. I really felt like police were starting to get the honor they deserve. And listen, I know there's always going to be a crooked cop somewhere because we're on this earth. We're not in heaven. So there's always going to be sinful people that do the wrong thing. It doesn't matter what job it's human nature. So we're always going to deal with evil. We're always going to deal with corruption. But as a whole, our police officers, the vast majority of police officers, just doing their job and trying to get home at night. Yes, the vast majority of them are. But you're always going to have some bad apples, but you can't judge you can't judge an entire community of people by a few people. And that's what we do far too often. But I do believe this defund the police movement, the Black Lives Matter riots, the Antifa riots have led to this mentality where we just don't respect the law. And Democrats certainly, especially with these no cash bail and all this kind of stuff. It's just absolutely insane. So unfortunately, you have 4 cops again that were murdered in Charlotte by a thug, and he was put down. But sadly, that's the way things go. All right. And that's the way things are. And hopefully law and order will resume in America. And the respect for law enforcement will return in America shortly. All right, now this story, again, this from Daily Wire. Arizona rancher that was accused of murdering an illegal immigrant trespassing on his property won't be retried. And I am so glad to hear this. But this particular 75-year-old Arizona rancher was accused of murdering an illegal alien that was trespassing on his property, and he's not going to be tried again. You guys may recall that just last week, the jury could not come to a decision after several days of deliberation. But I come to find out that there were 8 jurors. Apparently, 7 of them said they weren't, they were going to find him innocent. There was only 1 that was stuck that resulted in the hung jury. So 7 of 1, they were going to find this guy innocent anyway. And I believe they should have. Apparently, the gentleman's name, the 75-year-old rancher, his name is George Allen Kelly. He was prosecuted over the death of a 48-year-old Gabriel Quinn. I can't even pronounce his name, Buitimea. And listen, I don't believe anybody should die just because they're an illegal alien and cross the border. But the whole story was a lie. This was a gentleman, in my opinion, George Allen Kelly, a recent retiree, moved to Texas from Montana, bought a ranch there. He and his wife wanted to sit and wanted to retire there. And then you have this open border crisis, Biden's intentional open border crisis. This guy he says, men on his property from a distance walking and carrying guns. And so out of fear for his safety and for his wife's safety, he shoots up warning shots. Later on, he goes into the vicinity and he finds this guy, Gabriel Quinn, Buitimea, dead on the scene. He calls the police, brings the police in. Eventually, he's arrested. They never found a bullet that matched his, and apparently the guy was shot in the torso somewhere. Keep in mind, this guy is shooting warning shots up in the air. All right, so that doesn't even make sense. And this guy initially, Gabriel, was with other illegals when he was first spotted. And this was a guy that was suspected of being a trafficker, a human trafficker, whether that was for the sex trade, whether that was for bringing illegals into the United States of America. I mean, the guy was dressed up in like camo gear, a walkie-talkie, and all of this stuff. So there are there are suspicions that one of the other guys that were with them probably robbed him. Maybe he had some money on whatever it may have been. But this rancher is again finally gets to have some rest, finally gets to have some peace. This issue would have never occurred if the borders weren't completely wide open. And again, he shoots a warning shot into the air, and then a year and a half he's in court fighting for his freedom at the age of 75 years of age. And I'm sorry, someone's on your property. They're walking with guns. You should have the right to protect yourself. And again, he said he fired rounds into the air, and there's no evidence to dispute otherwise. Absolutely none. Absolutely none. So kudos. I'm glad this guy will be able to get some rest. Hopefully he'll be able to raise some money and continue in his retirement and rest and, just be a happy guy. Speaking of rest, you might have heard that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of the big box stores or these shopping channels. They've basically been a part of this cancel culture movement. So what they want to do is work directly with my listeners and pass on the savings to you. They have a $25 extravaganza. And again, when Mike started MyPillow, listen, it was just one product company, a few employees. But now with the help of his dedicated employees, he has hundreds of products and some that you may not even know about. So you can go to mypillow.com and peruse the site. But right now, to get the word out, here's what I want to do. I want to invite all of my listeners to check out this $25 extravaganza. The 2-pack multi-use My Pillows are just $25. My Pillow sandals are $25. Their 6-pack of towel sets are just $25. Brand new 4-pack of dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium My Pillows with the all-new Giza fabric are just $25 as well. So orders over $75 will receive free shipping as well. All you have to do, this is really easy. Go to mypillow.com. Mother's Day is right around the corner, fellas. All right. Go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl, CARL. or give them a call at 800-858-0263. Again, 800-858-0263 is the number you can call and use the promo code Carl, or go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Carl. I spell it with a C, C-A-R-L. I don't spell it like the commie. And you get the added benefit of, guys, listen, the left is trying to destroy the middle class in America. Let's face it. So we get to help some Americans in the middle class. Let's be real. Some blue collar workers. Go to mypillow.com. Promo code Carl. All right. I want to real quickly play this audio clip of Nancy Pelosi. This is Gabe's ex. And here's what she had to say. She was on a one. She was on a one-on-one. She claims to a reporter is an apologist for Donald Trump for pointing out the fact about job loss was a result of COVID. So here it is. Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker of the House, on MSNBC. Let's go ahead and roll that tape. Por favor, Gabe.
And Joe Biden is doing that, created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine. And he has the worst.
Anybody can accuse me of that.
Okay, so this is really annoying, but I do have to show you something. Could you imagine Speaker Mike Johnson messaging like that? Even though Nancy Pelosi is lying through her fake teeth and her fake face, could you imagine Speaker Mike Johnson setting the narrative and sticking with the narrative and making sure the media knows the narrative? Now, it's a complete and utter lie what Nancy Pelosi said. All right, complete and utter lie. No, Trump didn't have. We were in the lockdowns, right, and the pandemic. But pointing out job loss. Listen, everybody stopped working as a result of COVID. It was we didn't know what it hit us initially, and then you have the lockdowns that continue. So what Biden is trying to do is capitalize on people that are actually still re-entering the job market after the COVID lockdowns, mostly that he imposed. Even though I do believe that, the public health officials like the Dr. Anthony Fauci and Deborah Birx, that were total frauds, in my opinion, had duped Trump. He shut down the economy. I think that was a huge mistake. We all know that. We all know that now, and Democrats capitalized on it. They did exactly what they wanted to do as a result of that. But even Trump, after a couple of weeks, like, hey, we can work, we can open this puppy back up. But the blue states just simply refuse to, and they cause absolute carnage in their states, right, with job loss and all of this kind of stuff. And then you saw red states like my own, Florida, where initially it's like everybody was trying to figure it out. And then once we got things figured out, you saw states like ours, you saw Iowa opening back up. You saw Texas. You did see the Dakota that Kristi Noem is governor of. Again, I always forget if it's North or South Dakota. But as a result of her state legislature not bowing down to her wishes, right, to lock down. And so it's absolutely fascinating. So this is a complete and utter lie. Yes, we experienced a global pandemic brought on by gain of function research in Anthony Fauci, Wuhan lab, all that kind of good stuff. Right. But so a lot of people were out of work. A lot of people started coming back to work. We were set to get things under control. And then Biden took over as president of the United States. And he continued with those lockdowns in order to crush the American people and crush the middle class. And that's exactly what happened. But now it's not politically expedient to say that or talk about that, at least from the left point of view. And so that's what's happening. All right, real quick. I want to get to this story. All right, so President Biden is the least popular president at this point in his term since Ike in 1945. So this, according to Just the News, Joe Biden is the least popular commander in chief at this time in his term compared to any other president on record since Dwight D. Eisenhower. This, according to a new poll, with a 38.7% average job approval rating during this 13th quarter in office. So Biden's approval rating is lower than any of the previous 9 elected presidents at this time in their term. All right. So according to a poll, again, released by Gallup. So from a broader historical perspective, Biden's most recent quarterly average ranks 277th out of 314 presidential quarters in Gallup records dating back to 1945. So this guy is an absolute disaster. Will he be able to turn it around? I don't think so, because he has dementia, right? And honestly, I think they have people like Karine Jean-Pierre, who, remember the story broke last week. They wanted to get rid of Karine Jean-Pierre. They realized she is so horrible as a press secretary, White House press secretary, leading up to the 2024 election. But they're held hostage by their own DEI policies. So they don't want to get rid of her because she's a black chick that happens to be lesbian. So they're held hostage by incompetency. And remember, they hired a lot of people into this administration that were incompetent, but simply filled some of these politically correct boxes. And so now it's a complete and utter crap show, as they would say. All right, real quick, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is urging Hamas to accept an extraordinarily generous ceasefire deal as Israel prepares for battle in Rafah. So Blinken urged Hamas to accept the latest ceasefire proposal, which he described as, quote, extraordinarily generous, close quote. For them, the U.S. is among a group of countries, including Qatar and Egypt, that have acted as mediators for months between Israel and Hamas. Listen, this is never going to work because these people don't have the same belief system. And Blinken is weak, and so is Joe Biden. And Hamas, Iran, and all of these people know it. So their goal is to get rid of the little Satan, which is Israel, to get rid of the great Satan. And as long as people like Anthony Blinken are in charge, that's exactly what the Islamists are going to try to do. Whether it's the mullahs of Iran, whether it's their proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthi rebels, Hamas, whomever it may be. The college campus nonsense continues. The Hamas protests, George Washington University protesters have dismantled police barricades, breaking into parts of the campus. Princeton faculty are demanding a record of arrested students be expunged and the students reinstated into a university. These are the trophy parents, right? Your kid got everything regardless of how bad they acted. And this is who's running our college campuses right now. So nothing's going to happen. Sadly, just nothing is going to happen. But these things continue to happen across our college campuses. You have Gascon's assistant DA in Los Angeles arrested on 11 felony charges for stealing some data, I believe, on other officers, but she was released within a day. So LA County Assistant DA Deanna Taryn, who oversaw Gascon's efforts, George Gascon's efforts to prosecute law enforcement officers instead of criminals and to release thousands of felons from prison early, was arrested Saturday on 11 felony charges related to the, quote, unauthorized use of data from confidential, statutorily protected peace officer files, close quote. Stealing data from police officer files, not prosecuting criminals. Jennifer Van Laar, Red State, I saw her on X the other day, or post on X, how more and more people are basically within the department, some that are retired, are calling out Gascon. People aren't scared of him, seeking revenge against them anymore. And they're starting to tell some of the stories of how he's destroying LA. Anyway, guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. And we really appreciate that. And please follow me on all things social media at the Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me. Biden will be in town today to ramp up killing babies. Yeah, we'll see if that goes over well in Florida. Anyway, appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you. listen, there's got to be some conservatives besides me that are Christian conservatives that are sick and tired of being on the defense when it comes to the issue of life, especially when we know that the left is going to use it as a cudgel against us, whether that's in 2024, 2026, 2028. It doesn't matter. This is an issue that the left is going to continue to use. So I have on the line or on air with me, Emily Davis. She is the Vice President of Communications at the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America Foundation, and she's here and she's going to teach us how to put the left on the defense when it comes to this particular issue. So, Emily, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast.
Carl, thank you so much for having me, and happy to be here to talk about this incredibly important issue. Okay,
so now this conversation stems from what former President Donald Trump and hopefully future President Donald Trump said on April 8th, and that is he basically came out with a 4-minute video, and he said that abortion should be left to the states. That is something that I agree with. However, I just believe that's not where we are right now. And I mean, you tell me how you feel, Emily. I just feel like we're kind of in a post-constitutional America where we've got to put this thing back together. And so even though I believe this is constitutionally right, I just think it's the wrong stance for today's America.
Yeah, I take a slightly different view, Carl, for multiple reasons.
Okay.
One is that the Dobbs decision said that the issue of abortion no longer sits with the Supreme Court with their thumb on the scale of life, that it goes back to the people for their elected officials. And thankfully here in America, we get to elect not just state, but also federal officials. We get a say pretty much in all of our officials. So that's where I see it there. But also, where you live in this country should not determine whether you live. And I just think about the states like Colorado that have zero limits for any reason someone can get an abortion. And we're not talking just emergencies. In fact, there's actually no data, even though the left says that a lot. There is no data to back up that late-term abortions are only for emergencies. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And we know, according to Planned Parenthood's former research arm, their own data, that there's 64,000 of those dismemberment late-term abortions happening in this country. So this is a human rights issue. This is a massive human rights issue. And one last thing, I didn't grow up here in the States, but I am so incredibly thankful that I live here. I grew up overseas in Taiwan. And I saw—
No way. Okay.
I saw what a no limits abortion policy looked like from mainland China.
Wow.
And it's baffling to me that the United States is okay with being in the same category, 1 in 7 countries in this world only, with the elective abortion past 20 weeks. We're right in there with communist abusers like China. So why are we there?
You know what? That's so fascinating. I didn't know that. I've interviewed Emily one time before. I didn't know that. Could you give us an example of what you did see? Growing up in Taiwan, I would have never guessed that in a million years, Emily.
I know a lot of people don't realize, when I start breaking out into Mandarin Chinese, and they're like, where did this come from? But my dad was a pastor. My parents were missionaries. And so when we were over there, there wasn't really a culture of pro-life. But, my dad did counsel a lot of women. And we heard a lot of stories, particularly from those who defected from mainland China, came over to Taiwan. And it's sad, Carl. It's really sad. I was a little girl growing up over there. And because the little girls weren't culturally desired,
wow,
culturally perfect,
man,
they were targeted for abortion. And there was a period of time where they banned ultrasounds because they did not want you to know what you were having because there was too many abortions of baby girls. So that really formed my thought process. And here in the States, who do we view as not culturally perfect and targeted for abortion? So these are the types of conversations I feel like we never have or engage on and frame it this way, because that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and I frankly think that it is a winnable issue. And just to be clear, I believe in I do believe in states' rights. I just know that the left the left does not intend to honor states' rights. I mean, Joe Biden is already out saying, listen, he wants to nationalize abortion again, where it doesn't matter if you're in a, so-called red state, blue state or whatever, you're going to have to adhere to the laws of the land. And that is to, even if you have strong religiously held beliefs, like myself and you, Emily, it won't matter. We won't have a say. Women can just go in and choose to go ahead and kill their babies, and that's absolutely insane. But I do agree with states' rights. I just think the left is so far ahead on this issue, and I'm like, we can get ahead on this issue. We just need to go on. We need to go on offense. So I don't understand why former President Trump, again, hopefully future President Trump, would back away from this issue rather than putting the left on the defense, when I think it's 70% of Americans, correct me if I'm wrong, Emily, that believe that 15 weeks is a sufficient national, standard, if you will, when it comes to the issue of abortion.
And we have some agreement here, Carl, for sure. I think it's not an either or, it's an and for me. It's states need to be as ambitious for life as possible. So you're seeing all of these different
states.
The
perfect way to put it. Right.
24 states right now who are protecting life at 12 weeks or earlier. But we're also saying we have momentum if you will just reach out for it. 7 in 10 Americans, and think about this, even after 50 years of Roe v. Wade that allowed for late-term abortion, 7 in 10 Americans reject those actual terms, even though they're never asked in that way. And they want abortion limited right around that first trimester. So 12 to 15 weeks, right when a baby can feel pain, when a doctor is administering anesthesia for fetal surgery. I mean, people really understand this. And so why are we not speaking in these terms? And I know one thing is for sure, you said it, the Democrats have already said they will not respect your state's rights. In fact, we're already seeing federal legislation that the Biden administration touted. They were on the campaign trail and they were bringing it up in Florida recently. He's made it as his administrative policy, which is this federal law that is going to strip all states' rights for pro-life laws that they've put in place. It's going to strip parental consent for abortions. Think about that. And then conscience laws. Doctors who don't want to perform abortions, we're already seeing this. They're going to be forced to do it, whether they want to or not. So you're right, Carl. They're not going to respect it. And we have to go on offense here. And we've got to talk about it toe to toe with them.
And here's the truth of the matter. This is the gruesome truth of the matter. Even if you set a 15-week standard, let's be real. That's not really a strong standard. I think 95% of the abortions are committed within the first 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks maybe of pregnancy. I know in the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis and our legislature have just said, listen, we're going to do the up to 6 weeks. And then, exceptions for the mother rape, incest, which is a very small percentage of any pregnancies or what. But I do agree with that. OK, I think there at least needs to be a national standard so that we can make the case and the debate and bring in some national morality, if you will. And then states like Florida, if Florida says, hey, listen, 6 weeks, fine. If Arizona, they changed it. But if Arizona said, listen, no exceptions, whether you agree or disagree, that's the states. And I don't think Trump should attack them. I think he should just leave them alone and say, listen, states' rights, but on the federal level, we'll do this.
Yeah, I mean, it was really unfortunate. He only gets asked a certain kind of question from the mainstream media, from the corporate media. And I think President Trump is the architect of being able to engage with the media. So instead of going on the offense and attacking a California or a New York, he attacked Arizona, unfortunately. So there's just a lot of opportunity for him to go on the offense against some of these very extreme no limit states. Or what about Joe Biden himself? The man has not had to answer where he stands on abortion at all. He just speaks in euphemisms. He barely says abortion. So we need to go on the offense against him, too.
What's so funny, too, is on the fly. This is another reason why I don't think that Trump should hold back. I know he's looking at this politically. And again, I think he's getting bad advice. But I think you put Biden on the defense on every single issue, whether that's the economy, whether it's the issue of life. Because let's face it, this guy, he's able to do it. He has such a personality where he's able to do it in just a sense. He'll say something and it's like, okay, that's a good point. I can take the cray cray of Trump because he'll give you this. And it's like, okay, we can hold on to that. So I think if he would take this issue up, and you're right, just go hard against Biden, I think this is an issue that we can win on. 30 seconds before the break, Emily.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now is the time, and the best way in politics to win is to draw that contrast. He has got to draw that contrast. So what is it between he and President Biden? And there's a lot. So he needs to make sure that he announces that.
Yeah, totally agree. Again, I'm speaking to Emily Davis. She is the Vice President of Communications at Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. She's going to join us for one more segment. She made a point when we were off air that I want her to make on air, and it was absolutely phenomenal and simple. It's a point that I think Trump should make, and we'll do that after the break. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast, guys. I want to share with you real quickly Wealth Protection Research, one of our sponsors here. At the very heart of our democracy lies a principle that we all hold sacred, and that is free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom that we cherish. Yet in today's digital age, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many feeling voiceless in conversations that are crucial to our financial independence and security. This is where Wealth Protection Research steps in. They're armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. They are defenders of free speech, committed to giving a voice to the silent. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. This free report highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't touch, and listeners can get it completely free. All you have to do is text the word IDEAS, IDEAS, to 76626 to claim your free copy. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, act now. Text the word IDEAS, IDEAS, to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment does not think you can handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. Again, text the word IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. All right, I want to go right back to my guest. Again, I'm speaking with Emily Davis. She's the Vice President of Communications at Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. Listen, Emily, we were again speaking during the break quickly here, and you mentioned a difference that consumers might see, female consumers, if they go into, let's say, an urban neighborhood, let's say the hood, as opposed to the suburbs or a wealthy neighborhood. What is the difference that you mentioned that absolutely I thought was such a great point? It blew me away. I was like, you've got to mention this.
Yeah, well, this comes straight out of the mouth of a director at a pregnancy resource center in one of the poorest minority communities in Houston, Texas. And she told me, she said, I've got all of these white liberal women coming down, protesting us, telling us that we need more abortion centers here, but yet they're building fertility clinics in their own area. And she was like, what a contrast when they're demanding that my people have abortion centers more in our area, and they are continuing to build, these fertility clinics for them. And gosh, that really just hit me. It just hit me.
It honestly, it hit me because I've been saying for years, Emily, liberals are not liberals, or leftists aren't leftists behind closed doors. They preach one policy, but it's not the policy that they live. They understand the importance of family, even if they don't go to church, even if they're agnostic or atheist. They understand the importance of family, passing down your wealth, so on, etc. But then what they fight for when it comes to policy issues is absolutely insane. What would you say to the people, the conservatives, Emily, that say, hey, listen, we just left, or we won this Roe v. Wade case. And it was already, we took it out of the federal government's hands. It makes no sense for conservatives to argue putting it back into the federal government's hands.
Well, I would say, once again, you really have to take inventory, because Carl, I had this same situation within myself. I thought states' rights only too, but then I really had to take inventory. Are the unborn human? Yes, they are to me. Are they worthy of rights? Yes, They are to me. And are they worthy under the 14th Amendment? Are they worthy to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Yes, they do, in fact, to me. And not only just from a policy standpoint, but I'll tell you from a personal standpoint. I had 2 unplanned pregnancies by the age of 22. And what was astounding to me was that my children, by a lot of people around me, were not deemed worthy of life. We weren't rich enough. I wasn't rich enough at that time. My car kept breaking down. I didn't have a marriage or a steady relationship. So just because they have less than perfect situations, these children, it does not mean that they are not worthy of protecting. And I guess the question that I would love to see posed to President Biden is, when are babies in the womb worthy of protection?
That's such a great. That honestly, it is such a great point. I always wonder. I'm like, you know what? Why don't we start asking the left? Well, when does life begin? I mean, have these people answer this question. And I would argue this too, Emily. I believe abortion, it goes beyond this issue of abortion, this issue of life. It goes beyond, and I appreciate you sharing that personal testimony, by the way. But it goes beyond the issue of abortion. In my opinion, abortion is a gateway issue. If the left can say, okay, this is when we believe life begins, they can eventually say, this is when we believe life should end. They can also say, this is who we think is valuable, or these are the people that are valuable. These are the people that are not valuable. These are the people that we should give. So this is a larger issue than just abortion. Am I wrong?
Yeah, the thing that's so disheartening is that in America, I think we believe the left's lie on this, even those on the right or conservatives, which is that women are empowered by their abortions. They shout their abortions. It's what they want. When in fact, women just like me, a recent study came out and showed that the majority of women said that their abortions were either forced, coerced, or inconsistent with their values. So when you start thinking about that, these are not things that are women's first choices. And I write a lot about this, Carl. What is Biden's economic plan, or what is he offering to women of unplanned pregnancies? Because all I'm hearing is his economic plan is more abortions.
Yeah, man. So, man, you're just dropping bombshells here. I really appreciate that. You know what? I want to talk about this, Emily. And again, I'm joined by my guest, Emily Davis, Vice President of Communications at Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. And actually, we only have 3.5 minutes left. So before I go on, just real quickly, tell people, Emily, where they can find you and your organization or help you guys out before we go on.
Please go to sbaprolife.org. Right now, we're on the ground canvassing, just explaining to people what the Biden administration, the extremism of their abortion policy, and what they're going to do federally. So we would love to see you on the ground with us. We're across 8 battleground states and looking to talk to people in 4 million homes and just have these conversations.
And let me say this, and I'd love to get your take on this. I think another mistake that the right makes from trying to moderate on this issue or move away from this issue and try to ignore it, except obviously the fact that we spoke about it earlier. The left isn't going to let us ignore it as long as we run from it. They're going to see or sense that they can use it as a cudgel against us. But I was just looking at it was some type of survey, basically. Donald Trump is winning virtually every group imaginable. Obviously, minorities, he's increasing. He's not winning, but he's increasing over Biden. But the one that he has a hard time with is one that, frankly, Republicans have had a hard time with for several decades. And that's single educated, college educated women. And frankly, the only way to nullify that is to go after more moderate and or conservative Christian women. So we think that we're going to win by moderating on this issue when the left continues to win by harping on this issue with the same group of voters. And we don't make the case to persuade the moderate women or the more Christian and conservative or religious women.
Yeah. And, we talk about this. It's really we call it the C's, you have to be the 3 C's. You have to be clear on, if you say you're pro-life, okay, what does that mean? We're living in a democracy, we're working within a democracy. What does that mean for this state or nationally? So what are your limits? You have to speak with compassion. And Carl, this is the part that I think we haven't always seen in the past. It needs to be both mom and baby. You need to talk to both that mom and that child, and you need to make sure that you were talking about how you're going to put compassionate safety net, pregnancy resource center support. What are all these other things that we can talk about that's not just abortion itself, but the bigger picture, like you were saying. And then finally, you have got to drive that contrast. You have to. If Biden's not, he's never going to say where he stands because he's able to be politically slippery right now. So what is it that based off of what he's putting forward, that policy I just spoke about, that federal policy? Nancy Pelosi yesterday said she wants to nuke the filibuster so she can cram through this abortion policy. We need to be talking about these things, but the other side doesn't, they dominate the conversation. And unfortunately, we accept their framing.
Yeah. And this is something, and again, not just on this issue, but this is something that we have to remember. We've got to put them on offense. We cannot go on defense. That's what they're hoping we'll do, because they don't want to answer this question. When does life begin? Okay. When's, late term abortion? They don't want to answer any of that stuff. We got 20 seconds left. It's yours.
You're right. He's not going. The corporate media is just going to harp on this every single day. So we've got to go on offense, and we've got to exude compassion and clarity.
All right. Emily Davis, again, Vice President of Communications at Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. Help them out, sbaprolife.org. Thank you so much for joining us today, Emily. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Carl.